you mentioned caffeine earlier on. What have you learned recently about caffeine?
I think that most of the effects of caffeine, in light of that earlier study that we talked about, and most research in general, suggests that caffeine is by and large a psychological aid. It does very little long term. If you look at studies where people are given caffeine for a period of weeks, and you look at how much muscle they're gaining, how much fat are they losing, how much strength are they gaining, in the vast majority of research, there is no effect on those measures. Even if acutely, if you give people a boatload of caffeine, they do perform a little bit better in certain conditions. And it also seems that if you narrow it down to like which individuals respond better, it works better when you are sleep deprived, it works better in the morning, it works better in individuals that are not as well trained, which all shows that, or all trends in the direction of if you are well rested and you are super motivated, then the effect is probably not really there. Maybe you can use a little bit of a kick in the ass, but for most individuals, it's going to be a marginal effect. And long term, it's pretty trivial. So I think people should use it that way as a psychological aid. And it's very easy to overdo it on caffeine. The main problem for a lot of individuals is that caffeine seems like magic, and therefore you can solve a lot of life's problems, including the ones created by caffeine, with more caffeine, or so it seems. And you run into this negative spiral where caffeine starts interfering with sleep quality. And the effect of that in the latest meta-analysis is present for 13 hours for the average individual if it's a good dose, some 7 hours even at a low dose. And some research even finds that a strong double espresso in the morning, like 200 milligrams caffeine, still affects objective measures of sleep quality at night, which is long after the subjective effects have waned off. And then you enter into this spiral where you consume more caffeine, worse sleep, more caffeine, worse sleep. And in the end, you're just consuming a lot of caffeine, and it feels like you're functioning better than you were before. But in reality, the caffeine is simply keeping you at baseline. So you are not improving your cognitive functions, your life, or anything. You're simply using the caffeine to be where you would be if you were well rested and not using any caffeine. Now, I'm not saying don't use any caffeine. I'm just saying it's a drug. Most people don't even realize it's a drug. Use it as a drug, not as a supplement or not as food where you just like use it just to use it. Actually see whether you get an effect out of it. Monitor if you're still getting a similar effect or if you're not getting massive tolerance. Can you function after one day without caffeine, or do you get massive headaches and are you intolerable? Those are indications. Maybe dial it back. And the good news is only a few days will resensitize your receptors to almost 100%. It's 9 days after massive tolerance. So just a few days for most individuals. That
Oh, 9 days. 9 days for someone who is completely dependent on caffeine will reset them back to baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So why is that so fast? Is that it's just acting so directly on the adenosine receptors and they seem to be quite robust at kind of going back to baseline?
Yeah, it is a relatively safe drug in that sense compared to, say, heroin.
Right. That's what I want all drugs to be compared to. It's a relatively safe drug, ... compared to heroin.
Yeah, it's still easy to abuse, but the abuse effects are not nearly as bad as that of the drugs that are commonly banned because people would abuse them.
Right, yes. What about the difference between caffeine and pre-workouts? I haven't used pre-workout for quite a while, probably 5 or 6 years. Did for a long time, the world of Jack 3D and NO Explode and stuff, and then dipped out. Presumably the technology, whatever that means, behind pre-workouts has continued to get complex. I know there's no stim pre-workouts now. I don't even know what that means. Talk to me. What's the science say about pre-workouts for improving performance, that versus caffeine? If you are using a pre-workout, what should you look for, et cetera, et cetera?
We never advanced past Jack.
Right, we peaked in 2011.
Jack was peak pre-workout.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack was not so safe, actually. But caffeine is pretty much as good as it gets. And funny enough, most comparisons involving caffeine with pre-workouts find that anhydrous caffeine, which is caffeine powder or pills, works a little bit better. It also works a little bit better in at least a few studies than coffee. And it works better in at least some research than pre-workout formulations. it seems that there are some negative interactions there. They're small, and if you like your pre-workout, it's fine, because in the end, it's almost a psychological effect anyway. But there is some negative interaction, it seems, between at least caffeine and creatine, and possibly between caffeine and citrulline or beta-alanine, one of the more popular pre-workouts that are at least somewhat promising in terms of supplements. So by and large, I would say just consume what you feel best or what you like best. But you don't have to spend a lot of money on fancy pre-workouts. They're absolutely not essential. In fact, they are pretty much useless for the vast majority of products. So if you like your coffee, if you like your Red Bull, or if you want the theoretically best just anhydrous caffeine, I don't care about the bitterness, and I care about my wallet, then just use caffeine powder. You can dose it super accurately. So that is the theoretically optimal solution, I suppose. But yeah, no, pre-workouts, I have very little regard for their efficacy.
What about fat burners? Do fat burners work?
No. There have been a couple reviews which all essentially concluded that fat burners don't actually burn fat. At best, they increase energy expenditure a little bit and maybe decrease your appetite. The best ones are illegal, though, and they are decidedly worse than, for example, fiber supplements. And even those are not great because of the digestive side effects, and you're better getting it from foods. But, for example, fiber supplements somewhat reliably result in fat loss, because when people supplement fiber, it decreases their appetite, it makes them fuller, they eat less, and therefore they lose fat. Fat burners maybe increase energy expenditure a few percent over a few hours until you become tolerant to them. And that goes for caffeine. And pretty much everything else that works is now illegal, like Jacked.
God damn it.
Yeah.
An FDA ruining the party, as per usual. This episode is brought to you by Element. Stop having coffee first thing in the morning. Your adenosine system that caffeine acts on isn't even active for the first 90 minutes of the day, but your adrenal system is, and salt acts on your adrenal system. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium with no sugar, no gluten, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other BS. It plays a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue while optimizing brain health, regulating appetite, and curbing cravings. The orange flavor in a cold glass of water is literally the best way to start your morning. I've done it every single day for over 3 years now, way before they were a partner on the show, and I love it. Best of all, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy, so you can buy absolutely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they will give you your money back, and you don't even need to return the box. Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the description below, or heading to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, you will love the full-length podcast in all its glory, which is available right here. Go on. Press it.